up, everybody? Welcome back. We're going to continue on with the Better Bow Hunting series videos here. And this clip, I want to talk a little bit about shot sequence. Okay, so I wrote about it in one, if not both of my books, I think, about the importance of shot sequence and how I feel it's paramount in assisting you in eliminating the disconnect that you could experience, whether it's with the animal in front of you, with a tournament, whatever the case is. Whenever you're looking at making a shot and you have anxiety creep in or other issues creep in, I really feel that shot sequence is, like I said, at the top of the importance level, because if you don't have structure to follow through, then you're not going to be able to guide yourself through there, because obviously there's something that's already fallen loose, a weak link in the chain, if you will. So the thing specifically that I want to dive into within shot sequence, if you're curious about shot sequence, I'm going to touch on it a little bit. We have a bow hunter shot sequence that we coach in the Alpha system. USA Archery has one that they coach for that curriculum. I would say that that's great for target shooting. It really breaks down and gets super technical on the back end as far as what your elbow and your body position, the way you're loading and you're holding the weight, transfer the load, and how your hand position, and it's very good. I'll say that. At the same token, from a bow hunting standpoint, sometimes simplicity is key. So if you can establish a 6, 7, 8 step sequence that you can ingrain to make sure you're doing things every time you shoot a bow, do it the same way, and make sure that step 1 in your sequence is done completely, and check off that box before you move to step 2, and check off that box before you move to step 3. So what I'm going to focus on here is not so much on the stance and how you hold your bow and what you do on your pre-aim or pre-draw, those steps. It's the step right after you draw that I feel is the most critical with bow hunters, that gets left out, that opens the door for anxiety to creep in and other issues to come about. So, and that step in our shot sequence is to engage the release. So it's always good to have some great tools. This is a right release training release aid from Right Release. We've got some custom alpha engraved releases, or the tools here that we're going to have on our store here pretty soon. But what this tool enables you to do is just simulate so much of that step once you actually get to full draw and work yourself through the process, whether it's working on a new release or just focusing on those steps one at a time. It helps you do that without having to be in a range or be somewhere where you can shoot a bow. I actually really like this type of tool. I take it with me when I go on backcountry style hunts, because can't take a block target, can't practice shooting in the middle of the day unless you want to go stump shooting and possibly ruin arrows. But to actually work on the part of the shot, the execution part of the shot, you can do that with this in your tent, at night. You can be anywhere. It's super quiet and it's super lightweight. So I really encourage you to consider a tool like this. And like I said, we've got some alpha branded ones that we're going to be up on our store at No Limits Archery and alphabowhunting.com here soon. But that step in our process that gets left out, that engages a release. So as you draw your bow and you draw to anchor, most often people will find their anchor. They'll continue with, whether it's a secondary reference of nose on the string, a kisser button, and they progress down to their peep sight and looking through their housing, identifying their pins, and they start working through that shot. And then they forget about their finger. And oftentimes what I see is bow hunters will have their finger up here and they'll start working through that process, and sometimes that pin will just sit in the center of the target and it'll sit steady there. And instead of continuing to work through your process, it's there, boom, and they're jumping on the release. Okay. In the event that happens, you need to continue with your shot sequence. You need to continue to work through the process. Most people don't ever accept that you're going to have pin movement, and what they start trying to do is they start to anticipate that. They bring that pin from the bottom up, and they anticipate top down, anticipate left, right, whatever. Or they'll freeze under the target or over, and they'll try to compensate and squeeze on it as they're raising up on their shot. I've done it. Many bow hunters have done it. It's something that most of us have had issues with. And unless you truly understand your shot sequence and how to accept it and never settle for anything other than a well executed shot every time. The arrow may not be in the center every time, but if you do your shot, your steps, and your sequence every time, then more times than not, you're going to be able to get past those mental disconnects again, is what I kind of call them, and work through it. So again, the step that I'm talking about that most bow hunters miss is when you get to full draw and you hit anchor, the next step should be to engage the release. Okay, on a index finger style release like this, you want to be able to, as soon as you hit your anchor point, before you start putting your nose on the string, before you start going to your peep set, anchor and rest your finger on the release. If this release is set so light that you can't put your finger on there, it's too light. Okay, that's another issue that that's another problem that starts to come about with the anxiety induced issues. Is if your release is set so light that you're afraid to put your finger on it, then pretty soon you're going to start anticipating the shot again and getting on it. So if you can get here, engage your anchor point, rest your finger on your release, just slight pressure. You don't have to put a bunch of pressure, just be able to feel it. At that point, you've taken the fine motor skill, the one of probably the only fine motor skill that comes into play within shooting a bow. You've got tension when you're drawing your bow. You've got tension to stabilize. You're using muscles and bone alignment to try to stabilize your shot, posture, core. All those are major muscle movements. They're big compound movements, if you will. The act of actually just squeezing this trigger can be it's a fine motor skill. Okay, so in my opinion, you should take it out or eliminate it, or if you can integrate it into your sequence to where it doesn't become something you have to think about. It's one time. As soon as you get back, again, anchor, engage the release. Now everything goes back to major movement, major compound movements. Again, as we start to push, pull, and execute that shot or drive that elbow back, whatever your method of executing a shot is, you've eliminated the ability to use that fine motor movement. Again, there's so many nerve endings in the tips of our fingers that a lot of times people want to just feel for it, and it's a mistake. Again, major movements, tension, a lot of weight, pressure, force engaging in your system, and fine motor skills. So in my opinion, that's where you should actually engage your release. Now on a hinge, on a tension, basically some people that use a click on a hinge, anchor, boom, and then if you want to speed to the click or get to the click as you start working through the process, that's going to be a personal preference on a click. I use a hinge. So what I do to engage my release is as I'm holding my thumb barrel to help pull it back, and as soon as I hit my anchor point, my hand is now in the place where it's going to continue as I start to execute that shot. So I've taken off any ability to have to think about anything for a fine motor skill. On a tension style release, again, so you're going to hold the safety down as you're drawing this back, okay? Anchor, and as soon as you anchor, you should be able to take your finger off the safety and continue with your shot process. So that way when you get to that step, and again in the coaching, in the sequence we coach is as soon as you see your desired sight picture, based off of a predetermined distance or based off of whatever you're shooting at, once those pins kind of hit that mark and they're starting to float and you're starting to fight for the center for that float, all you have to do is think about squeezing and executing that shot. And whether it's, again, by means of driving your elbow back or push-pull or whatever your method of execution is, it's now, it's already preloaded, if you will. It's set for you just to continue that shot. So engage the release. Engage the release. That's that step I want to hammer through right now. With any release, there is something that most bow hunters do in a two-part process. Again, as you draw back, and then you have to secondarily engage your release. Safety. You have to draw back, anchor, and disengage the release, if you will, in this one, or the safety. In a hinge, you're drawn back with pressure on multiple fingers. As you hit anchor, get ready to actually continue with the shot as you would. So again, the shot sequence is super critical, and it's something we'll talk about more as we get out in the field, and some of the workshops that we're going to be working on actually in-house, our situational bow hunting workshops, are going to get more involved into that process in the field, shooting at steep angled shots, distance shots. If you can have that process so well ingrained from a shot you take at 3 yards to a shot you take at 70 or 80 yards, then you're going to be ready when that time comes about that you have to pause in your shot sequence and hold. Whether you draw your bow back, animal's coming in, stops behind a tree, you draw your bow, and you've anchored and you've engaged your release. Now that animal continues on. Oh, it went too quick through that shot window. Now you got to hold again. So you're pausing in your shot sequence in that step, whatever step it could be, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is in your process, and you've paused for a second, and then maybe you even have to come off your anchor, right, to identify now, hey, he just moved from a 32-yard shot. What is he at now? That tree's closer. He's more like 27. Okay, now you've re-engaged your anchor point, disengaged the safety, or engaged the release, finger trigger, whatever it is, and now you're waiting for it to continue. And as that animal steps out, you can continue through your process. You find him in the peep, level your sight, everything that you go through with the continuation of that, you're able to continue with your shot sequence, check off every box before you move on to the next one. Like I said, there is going to be a time, and there's many times in a hunting situation where you'll get to a step and you got to pause. And sometimes you got to be able to go back a step before you continue forward, depending on what you've had to do to identify the opportunity in front of you, if you will. So shot sequence, shot sequence, shot sequence, super important, super critical. Know it. I mean, there's times with hunters and with lessons that I do that I have to, I'm making the person actually say it out loud as they're completing a step before they move to the next step. Because if you can verbally understand the command and walk through it in the same time, a lot of times that helps you understand it, ingrain it, and get better with it. So good tools, again, help you in the process. If you're learning a new release, oftentimes it's easier to do it here in front of you where you can see, as we are visual learners, and when you're back here you can't see what's going on. Use something like this to better understand what that step of engaging the release is when you can see it. So as you draw your bow back and you're going to pretend you're at anchor and you take off the safety, and now you're actually, push pulling on there till they get it to go off. Make sure your wrist is flat, make sure you're not curling a release, so you can see it better in front of your face. A tool like this is great for that. And like I said, that's the end of this video, I guess, with this clip. We're going to continue on and start talking a little bit more about effective range and some of the other methodologies that we coach, but that's going to be the next video. So again, before we head out, just want to hammer home that there's no shortcuts with anything in life, especially archery, bow hunting, and get better with your equipment. There's no shortcuts, there's no magic pills. The big hashtag we use, DBAP, right? Don't be a pretender, don't be a whatever you want to use there to finish out that phrase. But DBAP, focus, work hard. You want to develop the best version of yourself, get as prepared as you can be for the woods, so that we can be as most successful and enjoy your hunt at its fullest. So that's all I've got here. We'll see you guys soon. Shoot straight, and don't miss the next video.